Hello, my friends. Today I want to take you on a journey that feels more like a story than a history lesson. This is not about memorizing dates and names, but about entering the life of one of the most remarkable women who ever lived. Her name was Cleopatra, the last queen of ancient Egypt, whose destiny was written not only in gold and power, but also in betrayal, courage, and the ability to transform weakness into strength. More than 2,000 years later, we still speak her name. Why? Because she was not just a ruler wearing a crown, but a woman who learned how to control her own story, even when the world tried to control her. Her life is full of lessons for us today, because the struggles of power, love, and dignity are timeless. Cleopatra was born in 69 BCE in the great city of Alexandria. Her family, the Ptolemaic dynasty, originally came from Greece, descendants of Ptolemy I, one of Alexander the Great's generals. So from birth, Cleopatra lived between two cultures, Greek blood in her veins, Egyptian soil beneath her feet. The palace was filled with treasures, libraries, and tutors. From the outside it seemed like paradise, but inside it was a place of suspicion and danger. Brothers and sisters were not only rivals, they were potential enemies. Alliances shifted as quickly as the desert wind. To survive in such a place, you had to learn early when to speak, when to listen, and when to remain completely silent. While most women of her time were not given an education, Cleopatra studied like her life depended on it. She mastered languages, Greek, Egyptian, Latin, Hebrew, and more, until she could speak to almost anyone in their native tongue. She read science to understand patterns in nature, mathematics to see order in chaos, literature to nourish her spirit, and politics to sharpen her instincts. But she also had another rare gift, her presence. Writers who saw her argued about her beauty, but they all agreed on one thing. When she spoke, her words captured attention. Her voice was musical, her eyes alive, her confidence impossible to ignore. People did not simply look at Cleopatra, they listened to her, and that was far more powerful. Still, her childhood was filled with shadows. Her father, Ptolemy XIII, was seen as weak and careless, wasting money and losing respect. Her mother disappeared when Cleopatra was only 14, perhaps dead, perhaps murdered, and the palace, already dangerous, became even more unstable. At an age when most young girls dream of comfort and love, Cleopatra was preparing herself for survival. She watched advisors plot, she studied the art of politics, and she learned to turn every moment into a lesson. Even then she understood, power is fragile, and the one who depends only on beauty or chance will not last. She would have to be sharper, wiser, and braver than anyone around her. ESL Checkpoint 1. Let's pause for a moment to practice a few important words. Dynasty. A family that rules for many generations. Exile. Being forced to leave your home or country. Strategy. A careful plan to succeed in a difficult situation. Practice this sentence. Cleopatra was born into a dangerous dynasty, but when she faced exile, she created a strategy for survival. When Cleopatra was 18, her father died. His will declared that she should rule Egypt, but not alone. She was to share the throne with her younger brother, Ptolemy III, who was only 10 years old. At first she tried to work with him, but the palace advisors quickly turned against her. They preferred a boy king they could manipulate over a young woman who thought for herself. Soon, Cleopatra was pushed out of the palace, her crown taken from her head, her throne stolen from beneath her feet. Imagine the scene: the rightful queen of Egypt forced to walk out into the desert night. No army, no treasures, no security, only a few loyal friends who refused to abandon her. In that moment, exile could have destroyed her. But for Cleopatra, exile became her teacher. When comfort disappears, character is revealed. When applause is gone, the inner voice becomes louder. Cleopatra did not break down. She asked herself, "What must I become in order to return?" The answer was not more beautiful, not louder, not luckier. The answer was wiser, sharper, more strategic. She studied Rome, because she knew Egypt's future would depend on how it dealt with the rising empire across the sea. Rome respected power, not pity, so she prepared to speak to Rome in Rome's language. And then news came that would change everything. Julius Caesar, the most powerful general and politician of his age, had arrived in Egypt. Her enemies rushed to greet him, eager to use his strength against her. But Cleopatra saw something different: an opportunity. She would not beg him for mercy. She would persuade him with vision. But the question was, how could she reach him? The palace was closed to her. Guards watched every gate. A direct approach meant prison or death. So Cleopatra designed a plan not only to survive, but to astonish. If she could not walk through the door, she would enter as a story. According to legend, she had herself rolled up inside a carpet, carried into Caesar's private chambers, as if she were a gift. When the carpet was unrolled, Cleopatra emerged, not as a desperate fugitive, but as a radiant young queen, confident, articulate, and utterly unforgettable. In that moment, she turned her exile into theater, her weakness into spectacle, her vulnerability into power. And Caesar, who respected strength above all, listened. So we leave Cleopatra here, standing in front of the most powerful man in the world, no longer a girl in exile, but a queen, with a chance to reclaim her throne. The question is, will Caesar truly help her? Will their meeting change her destiny? Or will it place her in even greater danger? In Act 2, we will follow Cleopatra into her partnership with Caesar, a relationship that brought her back to power and changed the course of history. Stay with me, because the story is only just beginning. The carpet unrolls, and there she stands. Cleopatra, no longer the banished queen in the desert, but a young woman who dares to step directly into the presence of Julius Caesar. He was not only a Roman general, he was the most powerful man of his age, ruthless, brilliant, feared by many, admired by more. When he saw Cleopatra rise from the folds of that carpet, calm, radiant, and fearless, he knew this was not an ordinary woman. And when she spoke, she did not plead for safety. She described her vision for Egypt, her dreams of a kingdom respected and secure, her determination to rule with both wisdom and courage. Caesar listened carefully, and for once in a very long time, he was impressed. Caesar agreed to help her. Together, they planned how to remove her brother, Ptolemy XIII, from the throne. The boy king had his advisors, his soldiers, and even support from parts of Rome. But he did not have Cleopatra's intelligence, nor Caesar's army. The conflict soon erupted into open war. On the banks of the Nile, battles raged. Cleopatra fought not with a sword, but with strategy and persuasion, while Caesar commanded his legions with ruthless discipline. When the dust settled, Ptolemy XIII was dead. Some say drowned while trying to flee across the river. And just like that, Cleopatra was restored as the rightful queen of Egypt. Yet this was not the same Cleopatra who had left the palace in shame. Exile had sharpened her mind. The alliance with Caesar had given her power. And now, as queen, she intended to rule differently. She respected Egyptian traditions, appearing not just as a Greek monarch, but as the living image of Isis, the goddess of motherhood and magic. She worked to strengthen Egypt's economy, improve trade, and restore the country's pride. But there was something else growing alongside her political victory, her relationship with Caesar himself. Caesar was over 30 years older than Cleopatra, but that did not matter. She admired his confidence, his ability to command armies, his vision of empire. He admired her intelligence, her charm, her courage to stand as his equal in conversation. Their partnership was not only political, it became personal. In 47 BCE, Cleopatra gave birth to a son, Ptolemy Caesar, whom people nicknamed Caesarion, Little Caesar. She believed her child would one day unite Egypt and Rome, creating a new empire that would outlast them both. For Cleopatra, Caesar was more than an ally. He was the father of her dreams for the future. When Caesar returned to Rome, Cleopatra followed. She traveled not in secret, but in triumph, bringing her son and her treasures, arriving in golden chariots with exotic animals and servants dressed in the splendor of Egypt. The Romans were fascinated, but also suspicious. Some admired her presence, others whispered that she was dangerous. They called her a temptress, a manipulator, a foreign queen who wanted to rule them all through Caesar's heart. Roman women watched her with envy and fear. Roman senators saw her as a threat. But Caesar welcomed her into a villa outside the city, and for a time she lived in Rome as more than a guest, almost as a queen. But Rome was not Alexandria. Power in Rome was sharp, jealous, and often deadly. Caesar's decision to declare himself dictator for life alarmed many senators who feared he was becoming a king. Plots began to form in dark corners. On the Ides of March 44 BCE, the plot became reality. Julius Caesar was stabbed to death by men he thought were allies. The Roman Senate floor ran red with his blood. Cleopatra, who had risked everything to build a future with him, was left shattered. She had lost her greatest ally, her lover, and the father of her son. ESL Checkpoint 2. Keywords to remember: alliance, a partnership for mutual benefit; dictator, a leader with complete power; assassination, the killing of a political leader. Practice sentence: Cleopatra built an alliance with Caesar, but his assassination shattered her dreams. After Caesar's death, Rome became dangerous for Cleopatra. Many saw her as a foreign threat. Without Caesar's protection, she and her son were vulnerable. She gathered her treasures, her servants, and returned quickly to Egypt. Back home, she refused to collapse under grief. She mourned Caesar, but she also remembered her responsibility. Egypt still needed her. Her people still looked to her, and her son, Caesarion, carried not only her blood, but also the blood of Rome. So she rebuilt her strength, focused on governing wisely, and prepared for what would come next. Rome, however, was not finished with her. Caesar's death had left a vacuum of power. 3 men rose to fill it: Lepidus, Octavian, Caesar's adopted son, and Mark Antony, a soldier of great courage and charisma. Antony soon turned his eyes toward Egypt, and Cleopatra, always strategic, knew that her future would once again depend on choosing her allies carefully. The stage was set for the next chapter of her life, a chapter filled with even greater passion, even greater danger, and a love story that would echo through the ages. So we leave Cleopatra here, a queen restored, a lover devastated, and a mother determined to protect her child. She has survived betrayal, reclaimed her throne, and faced the heartbreak of losing Julius Caesar. But now, a new figure approaches: Mark Antony. In Act 3, we will watch Cleopatra and Antony build a partnership of love and ambition so dazzling that it threatened Rome itself, and a fall so dramatic that the world would remember it forever. Stay with me, because the most unforgettable act is still to come. After Caesar's death, Rome was shaken like a tree in the storm. 3 men rose to take control: Lepidus, Octavian, and Mark Antony. Among them, Antony was the most charismatic. He was a warrior, brave and bold, admired by his soldiers, feared by his enemies, and famous for his charm. Cleopatra had lost her greatest ally, but she was not finished. She knew that if Egypt was to survive, she needed a new partnership. And when Antony called for her, asking her to meet him in the city of Tarsus, she prepared not just to arrive, but to astonish. Cleopatra never entered quietly. She understood that appearances were weapons and stories were as powerful as armies. So she sailed up the river on a golden barge, its silver oars flashing in the sun, its purple sails glowing like fire against the sky. Perfumes filled the air, music played, servants dressed as gods surrounded her. She herself appeared as Aphrodite, the goddess of love. When Antony saw her, he was overwhelmed. Here was not only a queen, but a vision, a woman who could turn politics into theater and theater into power. From that first meeting, Cleopatra and Antony were bound together. She invited him to Alexandria, and soon their partnership became both political and passionate. They laughed, feasted, plotted, and dreamed. Cleopatra showed him Egypt's wealth, its culture, its pride, and he showed her the strength of his armies. Together, they imagined a world where Rome and Egypt might be joined not by conquest but by love. They had 3 children together, and Cleopatra believed they might one day rule a vast new empire, but not everyone saw them with admiration. In Rome, Octavian grew suspicious, even hostile. He accused Cleopatra of seducing Antony, of controlling him with her charms. He spread rumors that Antony had betrayed Rome for the sake of a foreign queen. And in a way, he was right. Antony had chosen Cleopatra over Octavian's own sister, whom he had married but abandoned. The rivalry grew until it could no longer be contained. Octavian declared war, not directly on Antony, but on Cleopatra herself. For him, she was the heart of the threat. For her, Egypt was not just a land, but a destiny, and she would not surrender without a fight. In 31 BCE, the two sides met in one of the most famous battles of the ancient world, the Battle of Actium. On that day, the sea was filled with hundreds of ships. Antony and Cleopatra commanded their fleet with courage, but Octavian's navy was disciplined and merciless. And then came the moment that changed everything. Cleopatra's ship turned and sailed away. Some believed she was retreating to save her fleet. Others thought it was fear. Antony, in the chaos, believed she had abandoned him. His heart broke, his command faltered, and Octavian's victory was complete. Defeated, Antony and Cleopatra fled back to Egypt. They tried to rebuild, but Octavian's forces followed quickly. They were outnumbered, outmatched, and out of time. Antony fought bravely one last time, but believing Cleopatra already dead, he fell on his own sword. Mortally wounded, he was carried to her. In her hiding place, Cleopatra held him as he died. Their love, fierce and passionate, ended in her arms. Now she was alone, facing her final enemy. Octavian wanted to capture Cleopatra alive, to parade her through Rome as a trophy, humiliated before the people. But Cleopatra refused to end her story in chains. She dressed herself in royal robes, placed her crown upon her head, and surrounded herself with the treasures of her reign. According to legend, she arranged for a basket containing a poisonous snake, an asp, to be brought to her chambers. She let it bite her, ending her life on her own terms. When Octavian entered, he found Cleopatra lying peacefully, her dignity untouched, her power transformed into legend. The Egyptian kingdom ended that day, but Cleopatra's name began a life that would never die. ESL Checkpoint 3. Let's pause for our final checkpoint. Betrayal, deep disloyalty that breaks trust, dignity, calm self-respect, even in suffering. Though betrayed in war, Cleopatra chose dignity in death, and her legacy still inspires us. With Cleopatra's death, Egypt became part of the Roman Empire. The line of pharaohs ended, the temples quieted, and the Nile flowed on without its queen. But her story did not end. For centuries, poets, painters, musicians, and filmmakers have retold her tale. Why? Because Cleopatra is more than a historical figure. She is a symbol of resilience, of intelligence, of courage, of the eternal struggle to hold dignity even in defeat. She teaches us that power is not only about armies, but also about vision, that beauty is not only in appearance, but in presence, that greatness is not measured only by victory, but by the courage to face loss with strength. So, my friends, as we end this journey, remember Cleopatra not only as a queen of ancient Egypt, but as a teacher of timeless lessons. When you face betrayal, remember her resilience. When you feel powerless, remember her strategy. When life pushes you toward despair, remember her dignity. From my heart to yours, may you carry Cleopatra's strength in your own life. May you dream as boldly as she did, and may you face your struggles with the same courage that made her unforgettable. Because like Cleopatra, you are not ordinary. You are capable of wisdom, resilience, and quiet power. Thank you for listening, my friends. Until next time, stay strong, stay wise, and stay free.